Across epochs, humanity has journeyed from dawn to an age of unprecedented transformation. This is the epic story of the modern period. This is the age where enlightenment met the forge, where grand ideas clashed violently with iron and steam. Empires rose on a tide of ambition, yet beneath the surface, forces of inevitable collapse were already gathering strength. From the whispers of liberty to the shadow of mass destruction, how did humanity define its most consequential era? The modern period traditionally begins with the French Revolution in 1789, ushering in a long, transformative 19th century. The global industrial revolution, beginning around 1770 in Great Britain, introduced the factory, mass production, and mechanization. While industrialization raised living standards, owners and workers clashed intensely over low wages and harsh working conditions. Modern globalization started in the early 19th century, driven by improved transportation technologies like steamships and railroads. European empires lost territories as Latin America won independence by the 1820s through intense military campaigns. But industrial advantage allowed empires to expand, with Britain gaining control over the Indian subcontinent and Burma simultaneously. The French took Indochina, and the Dutch cemented their colonial rule over the Indonesian archipelago. Britain colonized Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, displacing indigenous peoples as large numbers of colonists emigrated further east. Russia colonized the large pre-agricultural areas of Siberia, expanding its vast territorial influence. The United States completed its dramatic westward expansion, establishing control from the Atlantic to the Pacific coast. In the late 19th century, the Second Industrial Revolution drove European powers to conquer almost all of Africa. Only two nations, Ethiopia and Liberia, managed to remain independent amid the rapid wave of European colonization. Imperial rule in Africa involved numerous atrocities, including those committed in the tragic Congo Free State. The Herero and Nama genocide tragically stands as another dark chapter of imperial exploitation and brutality in Africa within Europe. Economic and military competition fostered the creation and consolidation of unified nation-states. Ethno-cultural communities began to identify as distinctive nations, seeking cultural and political autonomy globally. Between 1828 and 1926, the first wave of democratization saw democratic institutions established in 33 countries worldwide. Most of the world abolished slavery and serfdom during the 19th century, marking a major human rights advancement.
We demand the vote
over several decades. The women's suffrage movement successfully fought for women's right to vote globally. Women also gained greater access to crucial education and professions beyond traditional domestic employment. In response to European encroachment, Japan's Meiji Restoration led to industrialization and the establishment of a colonial empire. Meanwhile, the Tanzimat reforms in the Ottoman Empire did little to slow the empire's continuous decline. China achieved some success with its self-strengthening movement, aiming for modernization and stability. Yet the empire was devastated by the Taiping Rebellion, history's bloodiest civil war, killing 20 to 30 million people. By the end of the century, the United States had solidified its position as the world's largest economy. New technological advances, including electric power and the internal combustion engine, dramatically increased productivity further. Assembly line manufacturing revolutionized production, allowing for faster and more efficient creation of complex goods. Technological innovations created new avenues for artistic expression through the new media of photography and film. Meanwhile, the pace of industrial pollution and environmental degradation accelerated drastically across the globe. Balloon flight, invented earlier, paved the way for future aerial achievements in the coming new century. It was only at the beginning of the 20th century that the first successful powered aircraft were finally developed. The 20th century opened with Europe at an apex of wealth and seemingly unstoppable global power. Much of the world was under Europe's direct colonial control or indirect influence via Europeanized nations like the United States. Yet the global system, dominated by several rival powers, soon began to experience severe and unresolvable strains. This tension ultimately yielded to a more fluid structure, foreshadowing the eventual collapse of the old global order. As the century unfolded, the world experienced severe strains, catalyzed by wars of unparalleled scope and devastation. World War I was a devastating global conflict from 1914 to 1918 between the Allies and the Central Powers. With an estimated death toll up to 22.5 million, it resulted in the collapse of four powerful global empires. Its new emphasis on industrial technology had rendered traditional military tactics and strategies completely obsolete. The Armenian, Assyrian, and Greek genocides saw the systematic destruction and mass murder within the Ottoman Empire. From 1918 to 1920, the deadly Spanish flu pandemic caused the tragic deaths of at least 25 million people globally. In the war's aftermath, a League of Nations was formed with the hope of averting future international conflicts. The Russian Revolution of 1917 resulted in the creation of the world's first formal communist state. The 1920s and 1930s saw fascist political parties gain terrifying control in both Italy and Germany. The Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin, from 1924 to 1953, committed countless atrocities against its own people. This included mass purges, forced labor camps, and widespread famine caused by disastrous state policies. Ongoing national rivalries, exacerbated by the global economic turmoil of the Great Depression, helped precipitate World War II. World War II saw the vast majority of the world's countries fight as part of two opposing military alliances, the Allies and the Axis. The leading Axis powers were Germany, Japan, and Italy, pursuing an ultimately doomed course of imperialist expansionism. The big four Allied powers were the United Kingdom, the United States, the Soviet Union, and the Republic of China. In doing so, Germany orchestrated the genocide of 6 million Jews in the devastating catastrophe of the Holocaust. Simultaneously, millions of non-Jews across German-occupied Europe and millions of Chinese were brutally murdered by Japan. The war also saw the introduction and first use of terrifying nuclear weapons, bringing unprecedented global destruction. These new weapons ultimately led to Japan's surrender, marking the decisive, terrifying end of the war. Estimates of the war's total casualties tragically range from 55 to 80 million human lives. When World War II finally ended in 1945, the world desperately sought a lasting path to peace and global cooperation. The United Nations was founded in 1945, aiming to prevent future wars and champion human rights worldwide. This led to the 1948 adoption of a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, establishing global ethical standards. Several European countries formed what would evolve into the European Union, an important economic and political community. World War II opened the way for the advance of communism into Eastern Europe, China, and Southeast Asia. To contain this advance, the United States established a global alliance network, including the largest, NATO, established in 1949. In response, the Soviet Union and its Eastern European allies formed the Warsaw Pact Mutual Defense Treaty in 1955. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as primary global powers, sparking the 45-year standoff known as the Cold War. The proliferation of nuclear weapons put all humanity at risk of a devastating war between the two superpowers. This risk was most prominently demonstrated by the terrifying October 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis incident. Viewing direct war as impractical, the superpowers instead waged proxy wars in non-nuclear third-world countries. The Cold War ended peacefully in 1991 after the Soviet Union collapsed. Unable to compete economically, Cold War preparations accelerated advances in technologies like jet aircraft, rocketry, and early computers. These advances led to jet travel and the creation of artificial satellites with innumerable applications, including GPS. The internet, conceptualized earlier, began to gain traction in the 1990s as a revolutionary form of global communication. The second half of the 20th century saw groundbreaking scientific developments, such as the discovery of the structure of DNA. This included the worldwide eradication of smallpox, a triumph of public health and medical science. The Green Revolution in agriculture significantly increased global food production through new technologies. Foundational discoveries in physics phenomena, like the theory of plate tectonics, reshaped our understanding of Earth-crewed and uncrewed exploration of space, culminated in the historic moon landings and continued cosmic discovery. These technical innovations had profound effects. The world's population quadrupled to 6 billion in the 20th century. Toward the century's end, the population growth rate declined due to family planning awareness and better contraceptives. Public health measures contributed to a sharp increase in global life expectancy from 31 to over 66 years. Extreme poverty decreased dramatically, with those living on less than $1 a day dropping from 75% to 20% by 2001. However, economic inequality increased both within individual countries and between rich and poor nations globally. Compulsory free education began to be provided to most children worldwide by the end of the 20th century. In China, Maoist collectivization policies, as part of the Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 1962, were implemented. These disastrous policies led to the starvation deaths of a staggering 30 to 40 million people from 1959 to 1961. After rescinding these policies, China entered a period of rapid economic liberalization and 6.6% annual growth. In the post-war decades, a major process of decolonization saw African, Asian, and Oceanian colonies gain formal independence. Post-colonial states struggled to grow their economies, facing structural barriers and reliance on commodity exports. Sub-Saharan Africa was hardest hit by the HIV/AIDS pandemic of the late 20th century, a major health crisis. Africa experienced high levels of violence, including the Second Congo War, the deadliest conflict since World War II. The Near East experienced numerous intense conflicts, including the Iran-Iraq War and the First and Second Gulf Wars. The region also saw continuous tensions and conflicts between Israel and Palestine, shaping global geopolitics. Development efforts in Latin America were hindered by political instability and United States involvement in regime change. The early 21st century was marked by growing economic globalization and intense global integration. This brought both benefits and risks, as exemplified by the Great Recession of the late 2000s and early 2010s. Communications expanded rapidly, with smartphones and social media becoming ubiquitous worldwide by the mid-2000s. By the early 2000s, artificial intelligence systems significantly improved, outperforming humans at many circumscribed tasks. The influence of religion continued to decline in many Western countries amid secularization. Conversely, some parts of the Muslim world witnessed the rise of influential fundamentalist movements. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic substantially disrupted global trading and caused major recessions. The pandemic spurred significant cultural paradigm shifts, altering work, education, and social interactions globally. Growing concerns over existential threats from environmental degradation and global warming became increasingly evident. Mitigation efforts, including a gradual but necessary shift to sustainable energy, continued to make important progress. The 21st century continues to present humanity with immense challenges, from conflict to ecological crises, yet the spirit of scientific inquiry and technological innovation remains humanity's most powerful force. Despite the divisions, the modern world is more interconnected than ever, sharing ideas and knowledge instantly. The future of this modern period depends entirely on the wisdom and determined actions of the next generations. This turbulent, modern era, full of both darkness and brilliant light, continues its unwritten, compelling journey. The legacies of the long 19th century, the world wars, and contemporary history endure within us all. The story of modern humanity is a continuous narrative of progress, intense conflict, resilience, and ultimate change.